Hey, Dan, are we good to start? Okay.
I'm the oldest one. I'm the oldest one. Just three of us.
Dan, we should be good to go.
Okay, the meeting will now come to order. We'll begin with introduction of members, and we'll begin with town staff. And let's see, we'll start with Carrie.
Town Attorney Carrie Olson.
Dan Burray, Town Planner.
Henry Colangelo, CEO.
Okay, and for commission members, we'll begin introductions starting on my far left.
Tom Bransfield.
Victoria Chechet.
Bob Ellsworth.
Chantal Foster.
Robert Taylor.
Jen Talone.
Carolyn Freeman.
Joe Spada.
Okay, we will not be seating any alternates tonight, so may I have a motion to accept the agenda as presented?
So moved.
And a second?
Seconded.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Okay, the agenda is accepted as presented. Meeting procedures, we'll follow the meeting procedures we have been having for this meeting. It is a public hearing that remains open, so the public is welcome to speak at this meeting. There is a sign-up sheet over here on the table. If you intend to speak, please put your name on that list. That's where we'll be calling speakers from. 5-minute speaking limit per person per session. So after everyone has had a chance to speak, you may then loop around for another 5-minute session. And let's see, am I forgetting anything for procedures?
Bob, just that we have to end at 9:30.
Thank you. We do have to end at 9:30 because of facility restrictions. Thank you. Okay. So that's it for meeting procedures. So this is a public hearing, a continuation of the public hearing for application 23-17, 69 Marlborough Street, request for special permit modification, application and property of BRT DeMarco, PTP LLC, map 19, lot 68, zone B2, B3, and TCBD.
Before we
Yes.
start, Dawn's not here.
Dawn is not here, no.
So, do we have someone reporting for us today? Or?
She'll have to do the minutes from the YouTube video or the recording.
Can you turn these down just a little bit so you're not getting so
Yeah, we are getting a bit of feedback. Can these be turned down just a bit? Test. Is that better? About the same.
About the same?
About the same, I'd say. Test. Test again.
Dylan, would it be possible to turn the mics down just a little bit? Thanks. Is that better?
Okay. Yeah, that sounds much better.
Thanks, Dylan.
Okay, thank you. So this is a continuation of our public hearing from 2 weeks ago. Let's see, I'm not really sure how to start this meeting. We do have some new information that has been presented. Is there anything, Dan, you want to say to start this meeting, or should we ask Mr. Bertram to speak?
Yeah, why don't we start with the applicant, if that's what you guys feel is okay, and they can explain what they submitted, and then we can take it from there.
Okay. So as per usual, please identify yourself, name and address, please. Thank you.
I'm Dave Daniels, and from Daniels Porco and Lasardi, representing BRT DeMarco.
Dave, could you just put the mic up a little bit more so we can hear you a little better?
Want to repeat that?
I think we got it, but I think that'll help a little bit.
Okay. So, the developer heard the concerns of the commission at the last meeting, and I'm going to go over a proposal that I believe was submitted that is intended to address the concerns about assuring compliance with the regulations applicable to the special use permit. Can I have the first slide? Is that the best we're going to do? Okay. So,
Sure, I can try to do that. Nick, can you zoom into the top one? And then perfect.
Do we have these, or?
I believe
Okay.
those are the same architecturals that we had gotten
Yeah.
prior.
Just to orient everyone and people in the audience, this is Building A, which is the subject of the proposal for the independent living facility. Next slide, please. It's another view. Next slide. Another view, and that's the area where the amenities will be. Next slide, please. To refresh everyone's recollection, this is the first floor layout, and the top half is the amenity space, which will be, if you could give me the slide, we have a zoomed-in version. Next slide, please. So we have the amenity space, which is this, living room, lounge area, library, theater, wellness center, the social director and the executive director. This will be the on-site coordinators. Location, I'll explain that further. Sales, private dining. Can't read that because I'm kitchen and dining room and meditation room. So, and that's the entrance to the fourth floor rooftop restaurant. So the next slide, please. So it's recognized in the healthcare arena that there are certain activities of daily living that are recognized as being needed for function and are generally associated with assisted living. So the proposal is to make it a condition of tenancy for anyone desiring to occupy the building. Next slide, actually. That at least one resident meet not only the requirements in the regulations to be over the age of 55 and the related provisions, but also that they require at least one or more of these activities of daily living, which are bathing and showering, personal hygiene and grooming, dressing, toilet hygiene, functional mobility, self-feeding, cleaning and maintaining the apartment, moving within the community, preparing meals, shopping for groceries and other necessities, taking prescribed medication, using the telephone or other forms of communication, and transportation for shopping, social and recreational events, and healthcare appointments and similar needs. So there'll be next slide, please. Okay, we're missing, is it? Oh, there we go. So the mechanism for enforcement will be that in the residency agreement, the language that I just indicated, that I just described above, will be included, and there will also be a certification by the resident that they meet the condition that I just described, that at least one of the residents meets those criteria of being at least 55 and needing at least one of those activities of daily living. And a failure to meet that condition will be, or a violation of that in the future will lead to the right of the developer to terminate the tenancy. Next slide. So that's a summary. Any questions? Thank you.
So what we put together there was really our best way of trying to address the concerns from last meeting. What we have here, of course, is just the visual. We have a site plan on the next couple of slides in case questions come up that that pertain to the other buildings, and that way we could roll forward to one of those and answer questions. But that is our presentation, and our best stab at addressing the commission's concerns.
Okay, thank you. Questions or comments?
I have a question.
Yes.
So when we first heard the presentation for the over 55 housing, you seemed, I recalled, I could be wrong, but I recalled that you made the point that you wanted to have a somewhat vibrant community of over 55 people. In other words, you weren't necessarily looking to populate that building with a lot of people who needed a lot of services. That's what I heard. Is that correct or not?
That's correct. I mean, that's certainly the aspiration.
Okay. I
But the
just wanted to be
regulations
sure.
allow
I just
what
wanted
they
to-
allow. I mean, I should say, fair housing, whatever the rules are for any one person coming in will be applied to all people.
Right, and so that's why I'm just kind of interested, because and I appreciate you're making this effort to say, okay, we're gonna be, in a position to accommodate these things. Not only are we in a position to accommodate them, that's really not, that part isn't necessarily being addressed, but you're saying that you want to have people like this in there that need help. So, right from the get-go on this, I know I'm bouncing around, but right from the get-go on this, I've had this problem between, is this assisted living? Is this independent living? Like, what is it?
Well, when we first came, it was 17 units of assisted living with an age restriction. Now it's 11 in this building because of the hotel piece. So it's been confusing because there are parts of it that have moved around a little bit. But there's a wing of that top floor in the last presentation that is purely active adult. But this independent living component is what we've been working to unpack and show how it is different from active adult. And that was really what we were trying to articulate with today's presentation. Because it's not something that is, if I highlight kind of what it's not, we're not making it a hospital, right? That is got so many things going on that the vibrancy is,
Right. So I guess when I look at the list, it just seems to me that you're putting yourself in a position of making it a requirement to have people that need a lot more help than others would need in a truly independent living facility.
Well, I think that the intention was certainly today with our presentation to add to what we've submitted. So in the prior rounds of things, we kind of said how we would deliver services, and it can be through a variety of ways. We gave another broader scope, but it felt like we needed to, in conversations with the town, I mean, we've all been working on trying to address the commission's concerns. So I guess where I'm going with this is just that if one person living there needs one of those things, right, then there'll be a way to do that well. And the on-site coordinator that Dave referred to is one of the resources. That's why we asked him to show the first floor of the A building again, to just show how the programming of the building is different from, say, other parts of the site.
Okay. And, I mean, just for argument's sake, anybody could meet this list of criteria, because I could meet this list of criteria because it says that I would need help cleaning and maintaining my apartment. So, like anybody can meet that, right?
Well, I would say you have to be 55 and older, and Dave, you can,
No,
if you want to.
I'm just saying that it's not, there are things on here that could make anybody be eligible. But on the other hand, I am looking at the list and thinking, okay, so if you're having all of these things on here, the bathing and the showering and the dressing and the toilet hygiene, what you're implying then is that you're going to have services in that facility that's going to be able to help these people. And I just want to make sure that that's
Right,
really
and
what we're doing.
I'm sorry,
No.
so, and this is modeled after state regulations that have the requirement that core services be available. They're very similar to this list. But there's no requirement in the state regulations that any resident actually need them. But you have to provide them, and they have to be available, and it's an option for the residents. So that, this didn't come out of whole cloth. This is sort of modeled after what's been tried, and, you know, there's always, there's a spectrum of assisted living, but.
So how would you go about policing that? Because I mean, from the town's perspective, the only thing we can actually look at is whether or not their leases contain this clause. After that, we kind of have to rely on you for that.
Well, the age part is pretty, black and white, right? The rest of it is a representation of someone's need for and desire for service. I guess one thing I want to throw out that will get to the answer to your question is, because this is an evolving space that goes from the age-restricted only to full services, and there are somewhat blurry lines between independent living and assisted living and convalescent care. And what you'll see is they have this continuing care retirement community. That's another term in this space, where they have portions of a project having different classifications. So no services, some services, more services, all in the same place. And so this is all moving around. So the whole idea here is that in putting this next to the rest of the community and all the retail and shopping and the walkability of the downtown, we think this is a very interesting and compelling solution for seniors who are just starting to need help. And so they could come in needing one or two and be there until they need all of them, right? And until they need none of them, not to be too dark. But my point is that there is a progression, or however you want to call it. And so we think, though, strongly, I guess, to state one thing, we think with this addition to our prior submission that this fits, that in totality, our application fits the definition of a healthcare institution and rightly applies to Building A. Did I answer your question? Can you give it to me again, actually? I'll give you.
I was just more curious about how you'll be
How you
policing
police it, yeah.
Yeah.
I think that basically parts of this, just having the infrastructure will make it more expensive by a little bit to live there with the eating facilities and things like that. I think in some ways it'll be market correcting, to give you a very straight answer, because it'll be more expensive to run this with those services than it'll be to live next door in Building E or Building F, where it doesn't have all that extra stuff that's being provided on site. So some of that will get built into everybody's rent. Not all of it, but some of it will.
So it would be like some type of thing where someone's given like a checklist, and they're required to sign up for a service, and that's like an
yeah, and then they're
additional charge
paying
on their
for
lease.
categories of service. That's how a lot of the independent living facilities work. And so you're kind of buying packages of things sometimes.
Okay.
So, and we pulled in leases from different independent living facilities in the state, and we just kind of looked through what we would think worked well at this overall site. Okay.
Thank you.
Yep.
For the, how many apartments again, Dan, in this building? In this building?
So there are,
Like 120?
let's see,
What is it? I forgot.
108
108,
of
okay.
independent living, and then 11 of the age-restricted only.
Okay, so for the
So
100.
119 is the total of, doors.
Okay, well, for the 108 or 119.
Yeah, 108 of independent living, yep.
Okay, so for the 108 independent living people, do you have any idea what roughly your staffing might be for that kind of population? I mean, there would be 1.5 people probably.
Yeah, because of the ways that you can provision services with contractors, and so depending on what the service is, when you have the human interaction, then that's a regulated thing, and so that can be done through a service that just focuses on that. And so the on-site person that Dave alluded to is a coordinator of these types of things, but not a provider of
Right,
it.
I understand.
And so it will completely depend on how we lease up and and what people sign up for. And to your point about that vibrancy thing, it'll be related to the needs of the residents who show up. So it's a little bit dynamic. But that core infrastructure, that whole 9,000 square feet, that's a big allocation of amenity space programmed a certain way. And that's an upfront commitment to us just to put the whole thing in motion.
Further questions or comments from commission members? Okay. Shall we open the meeting then up to questions from the public on this topic?
Sure, if the board would like. Okay, the first speaker we have is Camperary from the Middlesex Chamber of Commerce.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, commissioners, staff, members of the public. My name's Chris Camberry. I am Director of Economic Development with the Middlesex Chamber of Commerce. In my capacity, I work to advance growth and opportunity in people, business, the community, and the region. I'm here tonight to speak in favor of application 2317. This application has been through many iterations and amendments. The constant, seldom discussed, is the economic growth. This application not only moves the needle for Portland, but will produce exponential economic benefits for the community. With the approval of this application, you also create more opportunity for your families when they are just starting out or for when they become empty nesters, certainly a value you can't quantify. When you move to vote, I recommend you are crystal clear on your intentions of the modifications in front of you so that the conditions of approval have enough teeth in them for any remedies, if needed, to keep the developer accountable. If you vote yes for this application, I can promise you three things. The sky will not fall, the sun will come up tomorrow, and the economic benefits that you are allowing for today will positively impact Portland for generations. Thank you.
Okay, moving along. The next speaker is Ralph Zampana, 12 Carousel Drive.
Hi, everyone. First of all, I just want to thank you for the effort you've made on this. I know it's a challenge, and you're trying to be as fair as you can, and that's just, I'm really impressed what you've been through. I know after 6 years of being a selectman, I understand how it can be really challenging what you're doing. I will say, during my time as a selectman, there were things I was very proud of. I thought we made great progress in sidewalks. We made great progress in what we do with the water and sewer departments and the park that we built, which has been a great addition to the town. The one thing I will tell you is that I was, for 6 years, a liaison to the Economic Development Commission. And for 6 years, I listened to either Mary Dickerson or to Dan talk about all the possible opportunities that were coming to town. And unfortunately, for 6 years, what I saw was pretty much consistent with the memo that Mr. Bertram read maybe 2 months ago, coming from a marketing firm that spoke to the challenges it is to land commercial businesses into Portland. That is what I saw. And what you can see is the good example, obviously, is what we see what goes on Main Street. Now, there were larger projects that were coming to town, bigger than small mom and pop shops on Main Street, that somehow seemed to disappear. but it consistently seemed to be that we lost them. I don't know how many times Bank of America was going to be populated. It's just been frustrating watching it. And I know that the complaint that's been given is, well, Mr. Bertram, his rates are really high, rental rates are really high for the commercial spaces. But his rates have nothing to do, or trying to do, with regards to Main Street. So if we can't populate Main Street, how are we going to populate a larger commercial spaces in that B building? I worry very much whether we could populate the B building. So I know I really want the B building, but I do sit there and worry about whether it can be populated. And that's a concern that I have. So when they came forward and presented this unique situation, I thought it was intriguing. I was apprehensive about regular additional apartments, so I was interested in listening to what he had to say. The next thing I want to talk about was related to it is the big thing I've heard during my time as a selectman is how high our taxes are and why can't we build a commercial base? Everything comes from our residents. Well, here is an opportunity because, and I guess the only question I have coming out that has to be answered is, from my understanding is that due to the nature of this setup, these are not regular taxes that we're going to get from a regular rental. I assume there's some sort of a commercial tax that we've applied to these apartments. So there's going to be a greater amount of tax revenue coming in. And it's kind of funny because I've heard people, they're so concerned about it that in one breath they'd be saying they want more tax revenue, and then the other breath be saying, well, why don't we just leave it as an open space? Like, I don't get it. We need more tax revenue. We have other challenges coming. We're looking at a situation where obviously we have to do something with the schools. We know we're probably living on borrowed time to have voluntary fire department. There has to be sources of revenue. I think that what has been presented is an interesting approach to it. And I certainly, and obviously it was good to hear a little bit more detail. I don't know what other detail, maybe you have more, but I'm certainly open to the thought of looking at something that's a little different in order to try to address it. I think the challenge is that as long as we are between Middletown and Glastonbury, we are going to be challenged to bring businesses in. That's just the fact to it. And I think, so what I want to say is it may not be the most perfect plan, but it's still something that I think has a real opportunity to bring us some tax revenue. The only other two points I want to make to finish up is, one is, I know someone commented, I think at the last two meetings, where they said that, well, you're going to build those and now people are going to move out and they're going to move into them, and then people are going to go into those houses and they're going to bring children and there's going to be more costs to our schools. Well, that's the reality. I'm sitting here in my house, which is very large, and I don't have my two kids in my house anymore. And so that's going to continue to happen. That's just the nature of what happens. And the last thing is, a reminder to all of you is, and to the public is, everyone coming up here, you have to keep in mind why they're coming up here and speaking, because some people that speak up here, they have their own personal interests in what's going on. So please keep that in mind when you listen to them. Thanks.
Okay, our next speaker is Mike Nadolski, 47 Blackberry Ridge Road.
Good evening. Repeat a lot of the same arguments you had, so out of respect for your time, I'll try to condense my comments. Mike Nadolski, Chair of the Economic Development Commission here in town. I submitted a letter in support of the proposal back in May. I think most of the arguments I made there still stand, maybe a little bit stronger. I won't repeat them, but I'm just going to highlight on a few things. What's changed since May 8th? All of us, we got our electric bills. I told you here on May 8th, cost of doing business, cost of living, cost of operating a town in Connecticut is going up. It is. Not going the other way, it's continued to go up. So to look at an opportunity to expand our tax base, like Ralph mentioned, we got to look at it real hard. We got to look at it real serious, because these costs are coming. Otherwise, property taxes are going to make living in Connecticut unsustainable for people like me trying to raise families in Connecticut. We got to take this serious. What hasn't changed? Well, downtown hasn't changed. It's still basically empty, as Ralph said. Empty buildings, empty storefronts. Hasn't changed in years, hasn't changed since May, ain't gonna change unless we take some big, bold steps. We need a catalyst. We got a catalyst. Let's not let it go. All right. What else? Well, a couple things. When I think about this issue and I try to distill it to what's really in front of us here, and we've really got, despite all the noise and the bluster, there's only two real forces at play, right? And these are strong, real forces, as strong as gravity or friction. What are they? Well, it's fiscal reality. The original plan came out in a certain time, under a certain economic conditions. That's changed. The economy's changed, the need for commercial space, it's changed. Post-COVID, it's not coming back. The simple truth is, Dan, you, me, there isn't a builder in the world that can build what the original proposal was. We've got to have some flex. And what they've presented is flex. They've shown us options, a willingness to work. I don't say meet them halfway, because it's our town, but we got to show some flex. And I'm asking you to show that flex when you consider this proposal. Second thing goes back to what I pointed out. The main point of my original statement was the laws of supply and demand. Ralph is dead right on this one. Portland has a demand problem. We don't have sufficient demand to support commercial development, okay? Not gonna change, hasn't changed. We got a proposal here that can allow us to accelerate that change, okay? Now, this last point here I say with a bit of excitement, but also I mean it in the very best way, because I'm over 55, by a few years. But this demographic that we're targeting, high net worth, aging empty nesters with disposable income and time on their hands, this is target rich. We ought to be grabbing this. We ought to be putting up big signs. This is where you want to spend your next chapter of life. Why? Disposable income spend businesses in our town, attracting new businesses. Demand for spa services. Oh my God, look at it, it's a perfect match. Not only that, this demographic is the exact demographic that has time on their hands, time to get engaged in the community, to support in our schools, to support in our town process. This is a plus. These are good, positive results from this new proposal, a flex proposal that we ought to consider. My only message here, when you boil it down to, is listen, please do not underestimate the good, positive things that this proposal brings. It's easy, it's very easy, although I think it's reckless to only consider the noise and the arguments on this side. There are two sides to this argument. I ask respectfully that you consider the positive side. Thank you.
Moving along, Patricia Augury? I'm sorry if I pronounced your last name right. No, thank you. It's one of the few times. Patricia, if you could just say your name and your address.
Yes.
Thank you.
It's Patricia Agiri, 3 Bel Air Terrace, Portland. I've listened to many of the meetings that you've held. I still have a lot of concerns about the extension of building another complex. To me and my family, I understand Dan is in a position where commercial real estate is not viable at this point. Though we could use some businesses such as Kohl's or some place to buy a pair of pants that someone had mentioned prior. There's Old Navy, there's Home Goods, there's outlets that possibly could go into that area. My concern is the traffic. There was a slide that came up previously where it showed that there was a negative 35 cars being implemented during traffic time. I could be wrong with that, but that's what I recall. There was 170 cars that were going to be coming through peak times out of the complex. I don't know if that included Starbucks traffic or not, or if it was just the people that live there. When I look at this, I said, it didn't make any sense to me because they were saying retail was not going to be affecting that traffic any longer because they couldn't get retail. So there was a negative 35 cars coming through there. It was taking into consideration that there's still 170 cars, and there's 240 units currently. Most people have more than one car. Most people go to work. So there had to be more than 170 cars coming in and out of that complex during peak hours, going in and out to work. There is now a new light there. How long is that light going to be on to allow cars in and out? How far is traffic going to get backed up? How many minutes are you going to be sitting on 66 or on Main Street until you can get through to get to your job like you used to? Let's also take into consideration the Portland Bridge. It's 86 years old. 2 years ago, they finally finished the painting of the bridge. There's more work that will probably need to be done come the future. A few months back in the summer, there was only one lane that was open on the bridge. Traffic was backed up on Main Street in Portland, Main Street in Middletown, St. John's Square, Route 9, Route 66, and I was one of the people sitting on Main Street in Middletown for 20 minutes. What happens when there's an accident or there is inclement weather? Are we going to be able to accommodate all of the people that are living in this complex? At one point, a suggestion was made by one of the board members or the council to let's see how it goes. Let's finish the 240. Let's live with the Starbucks. And then let's see how it impacts our community. Is it going to be a problem for us to travel? Is it going to add more traffic flow? Is it going to affect our water problems, which we have that water supply project on Gospel Lane? How is it going to affect police and fire and the school system and everyday life in Portland? You're adding another 108 units, and basically all you're doing, no matter what you label it, whether it's assisted living or independent living, it's another 108 units. That's a lot of people. You're talking at 240, an average of 400 people, 400 additional people. And granted, yes, they'll utilize things in our town, but I don't know. I am opposed at this point to accepting that correction until we can see how it does affect the town with what has already been proposed. Thank
you. Moving on, Lois Vinciletti. I think I finally got that right. 1 Joel Drive. What is silent?
The E.
Oh, Vincelette.
Hi, Lois Vincelette, 1 Joel Drive. I don't want to be up here at all tonight. Believe me, I've been up here before, but I don't want to be here tonight. But I'm confused. That's the only reason I'm standing here. At the last meeting, August 29th, Tom Bransfield had asked a simple question. How did you label the building healthcare institution? To begin with, I hate the word institution, especially here in Portland. But I don't know how that, was that ever answered, Tom? Was that question ever answered? I don't know. I'd like to know.
Not really.
Okay, I didn't think it was. August 29th, I left here with question mark after question mark because I was confused about the independent housing. I'm not against it at all. I live independently in my own home, so I'm not against independent living, but I was confused about the independent living and the assisted living. I was very confused on how this was gonna all work. I do have 2 close family members that do live in independent housing, and they are independent. They have no assistance at all. Do you have to have one person? I just want to know for other people, do you have to have, in this 108, do you have to have a person that needs assistance? Or can those 108 apartments be 2 healthy people, or does one of them have to have assistance? I'm just confused, Dan, and I'm sorry. You probably told it okay, and I'm probably just confused about it. That's all. I just want to say one thing, and then I'm going to get out of here. I do not ever want our Main Street, Portland, to look like Main Street, Middletown. I knew Main Street, Middletown when it was great. And I don't want our Main Street to look like that, but I do want us to move forward. I want us to be moving forward here all the time in Portland. I'm not against anything that is going on down here, except that I don't want, I know we've been compared to Main Street, Middletown, and I don't want to be compared to Middletown at all. Thank you. So anyway, I'm just confused. If Dan could maybe tell again about the assisted living. Are you going to have certified people that are going to help people take their medication, bathe? I mean, you know, or are you going to have somebody living there that can provide all this? I'm just confused about what it's going to involve. If you could maybe explain it a little better. I don't know. Maybe you don't want to, or you don't need to. I don't know. Maybe I'm the only one that's confused. I don't know. I just don't want to leave here tonight being confused again. I want to know actually what is going in there, okay? Is that okay? All right, okay, thank you.
Dan, we'll just wait till the round of the first questions is over, and then if you, well, it's the board's call.
Why don't we wait until the first round is over? Yeah.
Okay, moving on, Debbie Law, 18 Belcourt.
And the thinking is there may be more questions for Dan that he may want to address.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hi, Debbie Law, 18 Belcourt. I just want to say before, thanks to the board and everyone who's here and who's respectful and speaks kindly and, you know, says what they feel. I agree with the lady who spoke previous to the lady that just spoke very much. We have no idea how this is going to impact Portland, and we keep saying we need economic development, but 240 apartment units, that's economic development. Let's see what that generates. And, you know, it's not doors, it's apartments. It's not 108 doors, it's 108 apartments. Most of us here in Portland do not live in $3 million homes or send our children to Ivy League schools. Not that those things are inherently bad. It is just not that they are certainly not the norm for most Portland residents. Most of us in Portland live in modest homes, work hard, want to enjoy a few years of retirement at some point, and most importantly, leave this town as good as we found it or better for future generations. I do not foresee this occurring with more apartments under the guise of anything, including healthcare institution. Being patient, waiting is often a virtue, and I believe for certain that this is the case in this situation. I would never let my child marry the wrong person for fear that they would never marry. I would rather them be single, or in this instance, I would rather plant a little grass for a season or two than to sell out this town so that others could profit off of this community. Apartment complexes by nature fall into disrepair and become a burden on their communities. It's only a matter of time. We have 3 golf courses, the quarries, and a good deal of commuter traffic. Portland is a diamond in the rough. And I agree 100%. The lady that spoke 2 people ago, she's much more eloquent and on track than I am. We have no idea how this is going to affect infrastructure, everything, roads, the bridges, no idea at all. And 240 units will produce economic development. Why don't we just take it one step at a time? Thank you very much.
Okay, next speaker, Grayson Hartson, 1 Joel Drive.
Grayson Hartson, 1 Joel Drive, Portland, Connecticut. In 1 month, I'll have lived here in Portland for 20 years, and I have loved every minute of it up until this project has come up. I am all for increased revenue, taxes for, to lower, help the burden that we have on our families. My concern is that it feels like we're building a field of dreams. You can't build it and have them come. You gotta have them already obligated before you build the buildings, as far as I'm concerned. I don't know how to go about that. I admire every one of you for the job that you're tasked with. I just don't want to burden. We talked, Dan said that he couldn't get the openings on the apartments until the sewer systems were upgraded. We have so many other questions and concerns, like the lady said, traffic, the sewers, the kids that we're gonna have coming into our schools. Everything to this point is escalating the taxes. It's not deferring them or lowering them in any way. I'm all for advancement, but I don't know at what cost. And I task you and commend you for the responsibilities that you're going to have in this decision. Thank you for hearing me.
Same old, same old.
Are you even still considering it?
If you're on Zoom, could you please understand that you're not muted? Okay. The last in-person speaker, I believe we have 1 person online that's wishing to speak as well. But the last in-person speaker in this round is Ben Serb, West Cotton Hill Road.
139 West Cotton Hill Road. I guess I'll start off kind of like Ralph did. I've served on boards in this town, elected boards for about a quarter century, just shy of 25 years. Dan, you did a great job tonight. I wish you guys had started off a couple weeks ago with all these details. I think it would have helped. I think we need to get something clear on the record. I think it's great when people come up here, bring up things, and they get information put on the record, because we didn't have that in the first couple meetings, and I think a lot of things are much more clear. I thought you had a great legal question asking on that. I think we're heading in the right direction. A couple questions that still haven't been answered, and I think we should if somebody writes down. How many bedrooms? I would like to know, because this is a big approval for the town. How many bedrooms? 1, 2, 3? I don't know if there are any 3s. Is he still committing to no children? He did say that in the last meeting. I'd just like to double check that. Is the staffing going to be 24 hours? I would think it is if there's going to be assistance with the bathroom. These are the details we need. It's all about devil in the detail. It's not like we're going back and forth as a community fighting a project, but if we are gonna approve a project of this size, we better get it right. People better understand things like the sewer do matter. I believe the chairman in the last meeting, we had a discussion, you guys had a discussion on whether the sewer plant could even be fixed in time, and I believe Dan said, well, he would take that as a condition. These are the things I think you need to get right if you're gonna go down that road. I think Ralph brought up a great point about we need tax revenue. Ralph, you're spot on. I served on the Board of Selectmen with Ralph. I have a lot of respect for Ralph. And I hope after hearing what he said, he's gonna be at the Board of Selectmen. If Dan would ask for a tax abatement on this, hopefully you're gonna be there saying no, because we need the revenue. So I expect that. And I want to be clear, I'm not sure if you were referring to me and personal interest. I want to be clear. My personal interest from the beginning is for Portland to succeed for many generations. I'm not going anywhere, even if you guys want me to, and hopefully my family's going to be here for many years. So I thought the chamber gentleman did an excellent job. He pointed out, look, get it in the details if you go down that road. But I really think we need to concentrate on the list that he provided, go through it, make sure you're comfortable with those being conditions, and keep in mind, this is going to be another 108 apartments. He's already entitled to the other ones, so the new ones are 108, and make sure it's right. Make sure the devil is completely in the detail, and you guys really need to iron this out, because if it becomes a problem, we're gonna go back to this approval and make sure we got it right. You can't enforce something that's not written, so make sure you guys have very good discussion. Make sure you get it right. I think we're much closer. I still have major concerns about something of this size. Once we go down this road, you're giving up, it was supposed to be our best mixed-use development. Clearly, we're flopping to 3/4 housing of some sort. We're down to 1/4 at best of commercial. Keep in mind, you guys are letting them off the hook for the CVS building. I know nobody likes it, but it still had to be built. You're letting them off the hook. I would say do not switch the Sage House, if I got that right, somebody correct me if I'm wrong, into phase 3. That needs to stay in phase 2. That's another thing that we're giving away. And I know, I just want to end with this, Carrie, I know on section 10.6.2, you pointed out that your opinion would be, because it was adaptive reuse, that it wouldn't be relevant for changing of these applications. Let's be clear, it does say if there is a change, and then I thought about it some more. And the reason it would do that, Carrie, is using your opinion. If he built a building right around one of the approved buildings, historic buildings, he could do it, as long as he didn't change the use according to you. That's not the intent. So you have to take it in its totality, and I'll give you one more point. The original approval had that building looking at the river over a 2-story building. We're now putting in a monster building blocking its view of the river. The Historical Society should have had should have had an opportunity to weigh in. I respect your interpretation of it, but there's no way that you can just blanket say, put a courtyard right around it, and it's okay. I mean, it wouldn't have to go back to them. I disagree. I think this commission does have the right to get their way in if they choose, and I think in the future we should always make sure that they weigh in on these type of things, because they all do go hand in hand on these type of sites. But thank you guys. Nobody thanks the board enough. They are volunteers. Thank you guys. I hope you get it right, but please concentrate on the details. And please, I don't believe we've answered Tom Bransfield's question, whether it even goes down that, but these are the type of things, get on the record, have a discussion, and thank you all again.
Okay, I believe there is one person on Zoom who'd like to speak.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can.
Thank you. Tim Dickerson, 12 Bell Court, here in Portland. I just want to say, what Dan's doing is he's trying to change his terminology of everything. This is not an independent living facility, period. It's not. Look at the state. They have one definition of one licensed independent living facility. It's for people who are severely handicapped. He's looking to do some sort of assisted living. Assisted living is not defined and included in our healthcare institution definition. All of our healthcare institution definition portions, except for the multi-family dwelling, which we know doesn't apply because of our other definition, are required to be licensed by the state. He does not want to license it by the state. He just wants to have a bunch of apartments that have different terms on them. He agreed he wants to have some requirements put on the people coming there. They have to have some sort of need for daily living services. Great. That requires that this facility be a managed residential community. That's what the state definition is under 19-13-D105. Anybody doing the services in there is required to be licensed under a state assisted living services agency. So he needs to have that in advance. You should have an advance agreement that he's going to hire somebody to do this for him. In addition, a managed residential community is required by the state definition to provide certain things, like 3 meals per day, regularly scheduled laundry services for personnel, laundry, and linens, regularly scheduled transportation for personal shopping, social and recreational events, healthcare appointments, regularly scheduled housekeeping services, maintenance, and I'm sorry I can't read the last one on my screen. Okay, he doesn't want to do this. He just wants to have another 108 apartments and just say, we'll have somebody who can arrange for services that they want. This is not a managed residential community, which is not required to be licensed, but is registered with the state. And it's not, it has nothing to do about how he's going to hire somebody to do the assisted living services agency who's going to do all these things. All right, I agree, we want to be flexible. However, we have to be in compliance with our own regulations. This is not a healthcare institute. Our regulations do not provide for having an assisted living services under some other definition in this area. It doesn't mean it anyways because he's not hiring the right agency. He's not making this managed residential community properly meeting the standards that is required in those state regulations. You know, this is one of the most vulnerable groups of personnel that we can deal with. We can't cut corners. We can't just say, well, yeah, it'd be nice if we just let them come in and they'll have this, you know, phone number to call if they need to arrange for transportation or if they need food for one day. No, the state says you must have 3 meals a day, every day. You have to have somebody on call 24/7. You have to have somebody at the facility at least, I think it's 35 hours a week. You know, these are things that he's required to have. You know, people say, well, we need the tax money. Well, I'm not sure if you're going to get more tax money if you put these 106 or 108 units in there, because contrary to what they say, you know, a lot of senior people in town are going to move into these and they're going to open up their house, and when they put students in there, you're going to be required to pay more in taxes for those students to go to school than you're going to get from these apartments. You may get more money if you leave it, you know, just trying to put commercial half as much in there. But you can't just say, we're going to bend over backwards because we think we should do it for this person. It doesn't meet our definitions. It doesn't meet the state requirements. Please, if you go and approve this as it is, and I mean, I don't even, we're still talking about it. It's changed 6 times since they originally put the application for the modification in effect. You know, enough is enough. Decline the modification. If he wants to change again, have him resubmit the modification, explaining how he's going to be in compliance with our healthcare institution regulation, and we'll look at it. But we can't be just drawing this out week and week and week and week. I mean, it's been, what, since March, I think, or April when they first had the hearing on this? Please, consider our own definitions. You can't change the definitions now. This does not meet our this does not meet our healthcare institution definition. Okay, it's not a licensed facility. Thank you.
Okay, that concludes the first round.
Okay. Would the applicant like to respond to the questions that were raised?
All right, I'll do my best based on the notes I took, and I may ignore a couple of things I don't think are terribly relevant, but I highlighted a few. The concerns on traffic, certainly we went to great lengths to show the before and after impacts, and it is a lesser impact than the prior plan. This is a site plan modification, and the record, I think, reflects that clearly. We don't necessarily have, the theme of it is a wait and see what happens. We really don't have that option. We are here for economic reasons in order to move forward we have to keep moving, and that's the thrust of this entire presentation. I'm going to come back, I think it was Lois who had asked about how is this independent living, because I think I'd like to go back to that after I address a couple other things. I will say that, yes, one of the things that you had asked about is one of the, there you are, sorry, one of the people living in one of the independent living units would need one of the services or more. And that was the purpose of our initial presentation tonight, to say what the specific representations along those lines would be, how it would work its way into a lease, and how it could then be later enforced if some representation along those lines turned out not to be true. As it relates to, we had another person who talked about traffic. I also talked about, I don't know, all I can say in response is I have 3 boys who all went to state schools for their undergraduate education and got a fantastic education, and I don't think I want to get deeper into that. In some ways, another gentleman talked about that you can't build it and they'll come. I would say that many times you must build it first, and we're very much and very visibly in the middle of doing that. So we have put up an apartment building that is 99 units and ready to open. We have a Starbucks, and we have all kinds of historic restoration going on Hart Jarvis and Brainerd in specific terms initially. That's an ongoing thing. This is a process. We are interacting with a market. We have and I've gone back and forth in my own mind about revealing this, but I mean, earlier today, we were told that the physical therapy tenant that we had lined up for Building F doesn't want to go forward. And their reason was, we don't know when you're going to be open. And so we have something that's a completely negotiated lease in final form, sitting there in August, and they're watching this process go on and on and on. And we can't go past where we are on Building F, and that tenant is in Building F. And obviously, I can tell everybody here today, I'm going to work very hard to salvage that. But this is challenging, because we fight and we get nothing done. So we're sitting here, we're on the field, we've made a huge investment, and we're trying to move forward, and we've modified our original plans over and over and over, and we have something that's actionable, and we certainly hope that we can proceed with that tonight. Some of these things that have come up, Ben asked for affirmations and reaffirmations, and so I don't know if it helps to hear no children for the 5th time, but in Building A, that's what we're talking about. There should be no children living in Building A. As it relates to the unit mix, 70% of the units are studios and 1s. The rest are 2 bedrooms. I think we talked about conditions of approval for sewer. We talked about SAGE into phase 3. SAGE has to go into phase 3. We're sitting here right now, again, with that buildings that are built, and we have enough challenges. Ryan's trying to talk to the municipal contact at Eversource, because Eversource is telling us they're still 30 days away from bringing underground service to a transformer before it even comes to a transformer and into a building, and then gets meters so you can turn on actual living things. And so you have Starbucks needing it. I mean, there are a lot of challenges. And so you're trying to work through it. And so we're out here saying we've made investments. We're trying to move this along. We've presented a way of doing it. The phasing plan is a necessary part of keeping this thing going. I don't know what to say about the historic stuff. We went to the Historic Society. They know what we were proposing. We got the idea to make the view shed exhibits from that conversation. So you can now see the other building, you couldn't see the face of Hart Jarvis. Now you will when you come over the bridge with this revised site plan. You will be able to sit on the back of Sage House and see the bridge. And I think of that back terrace, it'll be wonderful. And I don't want to represent things, but I do want to share that a lot has gone into this. And we've, it's impossible to satisfy everybody, but we have put together something that's viable, and we're tough. We'll keep working on it. And I think it'll be wonderful for this town. So I think in terms of the terminology and going around in circles, we supplemented our application without recovering everything we put in before, but we supplemented it with tonight's things because we felt that was a point of confusion, but with that, we feel it rounds out. So in totality, our proposal does fit under healthcare institution. And certainly we've had numbers of conversations, and I believe we're actually technically all on the same page about that. As it relates to execution here, the supposition that we would make the investments on the level we've made and then run independent living in some wildcat fashion and not do everything necessary to comply with all state and federal laws is absurd. There's way too much investment. There are way too many people involved for financing these things, the equity that goes into them. This is a very large-scale project, and there's a tremendous amount of review that goes into how they're operated over time. And so we will do a first-class job on operating these things pursuant to the conditions of approval. And so I would say, unless Dave thinks I missed something, I'd like to close on that. But we do need your help to keep the job moving, and we appreciate this full process. Thank you.
So before we open it up to round two, I guess I'd like to have a discussion amongst commission members, kind of the elephant in the room. Definition of healthcare institution. Are people comfortable with this proposal fitting in that definition?
Yes. I'm going to ask the same question I asked in the past. I read our definition from our section 2. And this proposal is based on the second sentence. Any multifamily dwelling with units designed for a particular population that requires on-site staff shall be considered an institution. Pretty straightforward. I mean, there's three things I'd ask myself. What's a multifamily dwelling? What's the particular population? And what's the requirement for staff? We've talked a lot about that. First question is multifamily dwelling. Our same definitions define a multifamily dwelling as any building erected or used and designed and intended to be occupied by no more than 4 families living independently of each other. So my question is, how do we go from a 4-family in our definition to a building that has 119 apartments in it? And I also just go back to the section 2.1. Words and their derivations shall have the meaning defined in this section of these regulations, unless otherwise clearly qualified by context. So what's the context that allows us to deviate from that definition?
So the language in 917.2 that was approved on July 10th, there's a sentence in there that speaks to no bedroom or unit count shall be part of this. And so I believe that's...
You didn't listen to my question. We're talking about the definition of a healthcare institution. We're not even into the multi-use regulation yet. We're talking, you said a healthcare institution is allowed use, right? So it's got to meet the definition in these regulations, because we've talked about this, about having to revise this definition for other reasons, and possibly do this. So we're working with this definition. So how do we
I'm saying the language in 9:17.2.
I read that, and I don't see that.
Okay.
I don't see that at all.
Okay.
9:17.2.
Is the new regulations, we included that in the last meeting.
Right.
And it talks about a healthcare institution in the MUD shall not have a unit or bedroom count. So I believe that supersedes that portion of the multifamily definition.
Questions on that topic?
Is this something we just want to do a vote on? I mean, it would kind of settle it at that point.
I'm sorry, what did you say again?
I said, is this something we just want to do a simple vote on from the voting members, on our position on whether it meets it? 'Cause I mean, if we approve it, it's gonna, by default, say, we're gonna be saying that it meets it. So I guess just to get over that hurdle, to avoid that, after or later, I mean, since you raised it, I mean, we can sit on it and wait, or, we can at least cover it now.
I guess I'd like to know the exact language that supersedes the definition of healthcare institution. I don't,
It was part of the changes that were made on July 10th.
I know, do you have the exact language?
Yes.
'Cause I don't have the exact language.
Dan, I have it right here.
Okay. Yeah, that works. I don't have to.
That's dangerous. No.
Okay. So, in the third sentence, it starts, provided, however, that residential dwelling units shall not include bed or units within a healthcare institution. That's the language I'm referring to.
State that again, if you would.
Provided, however, that residential dwelling units shall not include beds or units within a healthcare institution. So it's my position that because of that language, you're not counting the number of families or units within the healthcare institution as part of the approval.
Carrie, you agree with
Yeah,
that interpretation?
So again, I think the issue is that the amendment that was voted on and approved back in July took out of the definition of a healthcare institution the notion that it's a multifamily dwelling. And I know, again, ultimately, at the end of the day, it is your decision, but my recollection is that the purpose of this amendment was to recognize that a healthcare institution is going to have multiple units with people who require services living in one building, and that was the intent under the definition of institution of healthcare. Ultimately, the decision is yours, but I agree with Dan's analysis that by specifically amending your regulations to remove the number of units in a healthcare institution from the definition of a multifamily dwelling was the intent at the time.
Can I say?
Yes.
Of course.
I can see that the intent is there, I just don't think that the language is as clear as it could be, which is why I think that Tom is having trouble.
I agree, and I think
don't
we all
think the
agree there are a
language is
number.
very clear.
Yeah, I think there are a number of provisions in your regulations that could really use some work and some overhaul, and I think that this project has really brought that to light, right? And so, unfortunately, because there was an application pending, and there were multiple applications for text amendments that came up, you were being forced to look at them section by section instead of doing a complete overhaul. So it's not ideal, and I agree with Tom's concern as to whether it's clear, But I also agree with Dan's analysis that after that amendment, the notion that a healthcare institution is also a multifamily dwelling was discounted.
Yeah, I just wish that that were a little bit more clearly stated in the text amendment, so that this issue wouldn't even exist, if it were just more clearly stated, because you can interpret it either way. And I guess that's what we have to do, is decide how we want to interpret it.
Understood. And I think, again, just to be clear, the proposed condition of approval that was submitted tonight that requires that at least one person in the unit require services was done to appease the concerns that the commission has expressed, I think, the last 2 or 3 public hearings, that this is not going to just turn into a 55 and over apartment building, that there will be some component of healthcare that is required for at least one member who lives in each unit. So, and, you know, again, they refer to the activities of daily living, which is sort of the hallmark of not just assisted living or independent living, but nursing care, the whole 9 yards. So I think that they've attempted to appease your concerns that this will not be a healthcare institution that caters to people who actually require some kind of healthcare or assistance with activities of daily living. And again, I can't speak to what your decision is going to be, but I thought there's some clarification on that point, because I don't know how clear it was, that again, the intent was to assure you that the population was going to require services. It's not just going to be, you know, over 55 active adults, you know, having a party on the roof.
Thank you.
Also, kind of point out, our regulations aren't really intended to, like, interfere with other laws, such as the Department of Health's control over what is, you know, for licensing and everything. I mean, section 1.53 of our zoning regulations specifically say that, except those specifically repealed by regulations, it is not intended by these regulations to repeal, abrogate, annul, or in any way impair or interfere with existing provisions of other laws or ordinances. The Department of Public Health has control over what exactly would happen. If they call this a healthcare institution, the Department of Public Health is the one who will be the one to license them at the end of the day.
And I'd ask, is this regulated under Department of Public Health?
Yes.
This facility will be. They'll be licensed.
Something that we can absolutely add into as a condition.
Okay. Because I think when you want to say Department of Public Health, that means there's licensing involved. Whether it's a third party or the actual operator, but somebody's providing licensed service to these residents
And
in
I
a
think,
healthcare facility.
is that not what we just heard Mr. Bertram say, was that with these sort of services, it wouldn't be responsible to move ahead with these without any approval or oversight. I thought that's what I heard.
I want to be careful here, because again, my job is to represent you in the interpretation of your regulations. Your regulations do not require that a healthcare institution be licensed. It simply requires that it cater to persons who require certain services. And again, again, without getting totally into the weeds, there is a spectrum. Not all types of independent living facilities with services require licenses. Some do, some don't. It really depends on the level of services that you're going to be providing. And so I think it's important to realize that your regulations don't differentiate and don't require that it be a licensed healthcare institution. So again, it's up to you to interpret it as you see fit. But the express language of the regulation does not require a license.
But by Rob referring to that statute in the state and using that as a reason to call this a healthcare institution and allow it, for us to allow it to happen in this development, you're saying you want to see it be consistent with the state, but then the state requires licensing.
Well,
So
it
that-
does in some, it does sometimes, but not always. That's the point. It really depends on the level, right? The spectrum, everything from independent up to nursing care. And depending on the level that you're providing, you may or may not require a license. And so I think we, I see Dan's up here. Again, I'm not trying to give anybody a hard time. I'm not advocating one way or the other. I just have to say, you've got to apply your regulations as written. They don't require a license. And there are forms of healthcare institutions under your definition that would not require a license. So that was my point.
If I may add, so I agree with all that. And to clarify my prior comments, I will say that any service that's required to be provided by a licensed person will be. And I want to be very clear on that. But the facility being labeled as a licensed and then filling in that category, that's the distinction. So we are, and this goes to Chantel's question about the vibrancy and all that kind of thing. We're not trying to have it be certified as such as an institution, but again, if you require those services that require that to be delivered that way, it will absolutely be professionally administered by a licensed resource.
And I think that syncs with what you were just explaining, some services.
Yes, probably more eloquently than I was trying to.
I doubt that, but thank you.
So I'm glad you brought that up, Rob. 'Cause
Yes,
that was my second.
I think, and I think that, it led to a clarification for a lot of the people on the commission. Thank you.
So I have two more. The third one was the water treatment plant. This was brought up last meeting, and you did provide some information.
So that was provided by our Public Works Director, Rowan O'Halpin. He is here. I feel like if you have specific questions on sewer, I would ask that you ask him to come up and have him field those. He's the expert.
Yes.
Do we have to introduce him as staff?
If you would please.
I think if he just introduces himself as the Public Works Director, we'll be good.
Doesn't matter that we didn't.
Good evening, Ryan O'Halpin, Public Works Director here in town. I started here in town about 2 years ago, and the memo that everyone has a copy of tonight was already sitting right on my desk, waiting for me. Not that memo, but the one dated 4/26/2018, which with a list of priority projects at the water pollution control facility. I put these numbers on when I met with the chief operator that wrote this list of priority projects. I might as well just go down the line of the projects that are here. Number one, clarifiers. The second one, influent pumps, primary collectors, aeration tank, VFDs, bar screen, grit removal, blowers, generator, upgrades at Co-Avenue Pump Station, upgrades at Riverview Pump Station, and this doesn't reflect everything, and he made that statement back in 2018. There's still significant upgrades that need to be done all over the sewer plant, but when I met with him, I said, all right, what's our 1, 2, 3? And I still had this, sitting right on the wall because we just finished the clarifier project that I have as number one. Number two is aeration tank and blowers. That project needs to happen at the same time. So this is the project that would enable us to process 1.2 million gallons a day, and why we are limited right now to running half capacity at 600,000 gallons per day, which is why this whole conversation has come into the development here because we are nearing that 600,000 gallon average per day with this development going in. That being said, we are meeting with our engineers, Wright Pierce, tomorrow, and we are actually starting the engineering on this project. The costs are going to be significant. They estimated it to be $4 million. We're going to see what kind of engineering we could do, value engineering, just to get us operational to the 1.2, but we need to know our options. I can't really go into that because there's going to need to be a lot of work probably over the next 6 to 8 months with our engineers to see what our options are moving forward. And then I'll have to go to the Water and Sewer Commission, I'll have to go to the Board of Selectmen, and we'll have to find ways to fund this project. I'm also going to look into globally what our costs are over the next 10 to 20 years because this is such a significant project that we need to see what our options are overall down there at the sewer plant. The Mattabesett district is just across the river, so I need to look into that. Is that a better option for Portland? We only have 1,800 customers to support one sewer plant. The Mattabesett district has tens of thousands of customers. So they have a much bigger base to spread that cost out over everyone, where we have few customers burdened with huge costs. The $4 million is just a drop in the bucket, unfortunately. A whole plant overhaul would be somewhere in the neighborhood of $40 million in today's money. And that's if all the concrete is failing, which it's not yet, but one day it will be. So I do want to look at every option, but no matter what, we're going to need to do these upgrades, is my point, and the point of all of this. This project obviously puts us close and makes us fast track this project, but it could be a good thing. We need to get these things done. We need to move forward. We need to, present our options to everyone here in town. To see how we want to move forward. Do you guys have any questions?
I do have one question. Is this an all or nothing project, or could there be incremental upgrades that would give you incremental increases in capacity?
So that's exactly what we want to look into. We want to look to see if there could be a quick fix, like a duct tape and super glue upgrade, just to get us fully operational. And then, we want to know the cost to the stainless steel, 30-year, 50-year upgrade, So we're going to look at all of it and see what makes the most sense.
But it sounds like it's an unknown at this point.
It is, yeah. That's why we're having the meeting starting tomorrow. I mean, we've met before. Our engineers know, what direction we want to head in, but we just need to go over the full scope of what we want to look into at this point.
So I know the applicant did state at last meeting that he would accept this as a condition of approval if we were to choose to do so. And I would want confirmation, I think, again, that that is still his stance. And because to me, this is somewhat of a risk approving a project of this size that could break our water control.
I'll just put this out there too. Going over the revenue for the proposed gallons per day of this whole complex, it's going to bring in alone $250,000 a year for sewer alone. Not to mention water, we're expecting somewhere in the neighborhood of $200,000, and that's with today's rates. I'll just leave that at that. So there are significant costs that will come in, which we need. We need to expand that's why a lot of water systems are doing very well. The MDC has expanded and has a huge base of people to support the system. And everyone would be on new lines here, so it wouldn't need a whole lot of maintenance for a while.
The numbers that you just quoted, are they for what has been approved already with the 240 units, or are you Do those
I'd be
numbers
quoting with the
include
modification.
additional- I'm sorry?
That's with the modification.
Any further questions for Ryan right now? Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you.
And the fourth elephant I have in the room would be it's a topic we discussed at last meeting, but the question about the 16, let's see, what was it? Review by the Historical Society. So we did rule on that at last
Yeah.
meeting, and
Well, I stand by my analysis on that, and again, it's based in large part upon my understanding of the facts of this modification application and what your practices have been in the past. I want to start with, if you look at section 10.6.1, which is the purpose, it's the preamble to 10.6.2, which was the section that was challenged. And it makes absolutely clear that the purpose of this section is to promote adaptive reuse of historic and cultural resources, right? And it's very clear, it says the purpose of the adaptive reuse provisions of these regulations is to foster the restoration and renovation of these significant buildings and structures which have value to the community, and to preserve and adaptively reuse them by incorporating them into new development and/or change of use proposals to the fullest extent feasible. Now, you should also know that this section falls under your special regulations, which deals with special permits generally as well. So this is like a subsection of that. So when you look at what the purpose of 10.6 is, right, and you look at the notion that they had to come to you and get a special permit to do anything at Brainerd Place, including the restoration of the historic buildings, then the question becomes, does 10.6.2 mandate that if you're going to come in for a modification of what was already approved, already sent to the Historic District Commission, already signed off by the Historic District Commission, are you going to read 10.6.2 as saying that the minute that you touch an already approved special permit, even if it's not going to impact historical resources, does that mean you have a do-over? That you've got to file a new special permit application, right? And start over. Now, my understanding was, and I'm sorry, I'm snarky here. My understanding was that the modifications that are being proposed in no way physically impact the improvements and approvals that were made as far as restoration of the historic buildings that are on site, correct? And I believe Mr. Bertram already said that he actually did talk to the Historic District Commission about, well, I'm sorry, it's not the Historic District Commission, the Historical Society, about the improved visibility of the historic by the modifications. And again, so the question is, did they already have notice anyway? Was it constructive or whatever? But I also understand that this section has never been interpreted before by this commission or your staff to require a do-over when somebody seeks a modification to a special permit, unless the historic resources are being impacted. So, to me, the interpretation, can you imagine the burden that it would put on any applicant who wants to seek a modification? What if it was something totally minutia, right? They want to change the landscaping or something on site, and they come in for a modification of their landscape plan. If you buy the interpretation that's being put forth to you, even if the historic buildings aren't impacted, they'd have to start all over. Whole new special permit application right from the get-go. And I don't think that's a reasonable interpretation of the regulations, nor is it my understanding that that's the way this commission has ever interpreted these regulations before. So I wholeheartedly agree if a use or building, historic resource itself was being modified, that it would be prudent to go back to the Historical Society and get their input. But again, in this case, and frankly, this is not a Historic District Commission, it's a Historical Society. Their input is advisory. So in my mind, they don't even have jurisdiction to tell you what you can and cannot do in a healthcare institution or multifamily dwelling, because it's not within their purview. It's not a historical resource. So again, I take all of that together because you have to interpret the regulations as a whole. You cannot parse out one sentence here and one sentence there. You have to look at all of the regulations when you are interpreting them. And to me, it just did not make sense to interpret it as requiring a do-over. So, and Dan, if you want to confirm the factual premise for my...
Yeah, it's my understanding that the two modifications that we have had have not come back to or been referred to the Historic Society. Not the one by my predecessor, and not the one in 2022 when we changed the phasing.
And to be fair, they've known about everything that's been going on. They participated in, making public comment during the last session. They've been certainly aware of everything that's been happening in this one. They're more than welcome to come and make public comment. They wrote a letter for this time, so they've certainly had their ability to come in and chime in on it. So, I like the way it looks. And the way things have opened up a bit. You get better views of the buildings. Everything's going to look nicer, I think. So.
Do we want to go back to Rob's idea of getting a feel for whether we think this isn't a healthcare institution or not? Because don't we have to figure that out? Or not?
And I think that there are two other things that I just want to point out, have everyone look at.
Okay, can we just, can I give my answer to this question?
You're asking me, Mr. Chairman.
Before we move on.
Just tell me to be quiet.
No, I want to hear what you have to say, but I just wanted to, because this question, we keep coming back to this. So my thinking is that the answer, instead of taking a vote just on that one question, that answer should be factored into your decision on your vote to approve or not approve.
I agree with that.
Okay.
I agree with that.
Okay, then in that case, continue.
So, section 9.17.7.A.3, which is on page 9-38, top of the page, number 3. I just would like us to read that and think about that.
What was the regulation?
The findings required, it's 9.
917.7?
7A3, yeah. And I just want to point that out in relation to the Public Works issue that we're looking at. And just have us look at that regulation as a commission. And then the other one is prior to that, 917.4.A8, which is under general considerations.
Can you say that again?
Yeah, it's 9.17.4.A, number 8, under general considerations. And when I read that, I think about the potential of the site, the commercial development of the site, and the lack of potential for further commercial development that the site would have if we approve the healthcare institution. And so I think the general considerations are an important kind of foundation for this project. And I wonder, I look at that and that concerns me, because that's one of my concerns about this, is that, you know, and it does come down to, if you build it, will they come? And what will happen when you have 240 units? What will the demand be for commercial space? And I think with the amount of applications that we have coming in for commercial uses, I think we have a record number, correct? Is that correct? That have come in the past 3 months?
For the start of the year, while I've been here, yeah, it's been very busy.
So the trend is moving in a direction that, you know, we might want to look at that, and I think that number 8 points directly to that. So that's just something I'd like you guys to think about.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Carrie. I thought character was something that we couldn't consider anymore.
So again, the regulations really need a complete overhaul. But it's true, you're not supposed to, especially when it comes to residential dwellings, but this is a healthcare institution, but the whole project includes residential dwellings. You're not supposed to be looking at the character of the neighborhood anymore as part of a reason to deny an application.
But this is transitional character of the development to existing potential developments. So it's not talking about character in the same way as saying preserving the character of the neighborhood or preserving the character of the town.
I don't disagree with you, I was just answering the question that was asked.
But I think that use of character is distinctly different than this use of character, even though it's the same word. I think that the interpretation of that sentence as a whole is talking about existing or potential development more than it's talking about character.
So in other words, you're talking about the difference between commercial character versus residential character?
No, I'm talking about the fact that we have X amount of commercial space on this campus. And if we decide that we're going to allow this much of that commercial space to be used as a healthcare institution, we are limiting the potential development of commercial space in a very important part of our town. And I think that that's what niggles at me when I read this number 8. The word character doesn't even have to be in there for it to niggle at me. It's the development, or this is supposed to bridge from where we are to future development. It's supposed to help us grow, and I think that at some point we have to consider what a lot of people have actually said, and that's, you know, that this is it. This is all there is there. This is the amount of space we have. And if we take all of this space and call it a healthcare institution, that's that much commercial that we're going to lose. If you have faith that there's going to be demand. And judging by how many applications we've gotten and how much Dan is working, there's a record number of businesses that want to come into town. And so are we limiting ourselves in that way and kind of rushing to fill something up? And I understand that Dan has to, Mr. Bertram has to move. You know, there is momentum. I understand the economics of that, and that's the other side of it. But anyway, I'm just looking at that and thinking, That's a general consideration, and what does that mean? What does that number 8 mean?
Okay. Anything else?
Not right now.
Okay. I believe the applicant would like to respond.
Yeah, if I may. One, I think I would start with a prior point for a second in reaffirming the condition of approval on sewer. And yes, our position has not changed on that. I think that that's an appropriate thing to do in this circumstance. The other point about how interconnected all this stuff is, clearly we're talking about independent living as being a delivery mechanism for this rooftop restaurant experience, and that being the thing that has had the most buzz about this entire project.
Yeah.
And so it is catalytic that way. If we go to the next slide on this PDF, this building here is necessary to create the 32,000 square feet, the B building out here. And so we'll never get financing for the B building alone. If it's not combined with A, where we have something that is known to cash flow because of known demand factors, then it's stuck. So this is all interwoven. I've made comments in the past about the Nordic Spa. They come in, they see a job of this size, they're institutional in their approach to coming in from Canada into this market. They want to 10 sites, and this is one of the first. And they see that the things that we have going on here with Starbucks on the corner, the scale of the development, they're placing a bet that we're not going to come to a grinding halt. And so when we talk about other interest, absolutely. That was sort of the whole point of the project, is to try to get the interest in the surrounding area. I've long said that this is not the whole story. This is just a catalytic development to help the rest of the town, and I'm thrilled to hear the increase in demand. But I think it's very related. So you stole my thunder when you said momentum counts at the end, and I just would highlight that.
Okay. Further questions or comments? Go ahead.
I do think somebody else signed up from the public.
Yeah, we definitely
Okay.
will open it up to
Okay.
round 2 for the public. We won't end that yet, but I just wanted to kind of get a consensus from folks on what we've heard, what we've talked about. I guess getting back to my 4 items, the communication from the Historical Society. I just don't want to discount it at all, totally. So I think we should somehow respond in some capacity to them. And I don't know if that's offering a review or really what shape that would take. But I don't want to just discount communication completely.
Bob, I mean, I think the primary part of their letter was, we are aware that the plan of conservation development is being updated soon. We'd like to offer the assistance of, sorry, I'm reading the wrong section probably, but, I mean, they didn't really say much of substance.
Can you speak a little louder?
Sorry, I'm saying the letter the Historical Society submitted for this meeting today, they didn't really provide anything of substance saying that, their position on this. It's just that they reviewed it, they're aware that it's being, that they discussed it, and.
It's that next paragraph that got me. I'm writing to affirm our commitment, expectation to be notified and to fully participate in the procedure as written, 10.6.2. So I interpret that as meaning this revision, proposed revision. That's how I interpret it.
Mr. Chairman, if I could.
Yes.
Again, I agree with the comments made that after reading that email, it wasn't like they asked for a specific response. It wasn't like they made a specific claim. They simply said, we want you to treat us the way, your regulations require pursuant to 10.6.2. To me, that could mean, consistent with our interpretation, that a modification may not necessarily require that they be notified. So, again, I think a response to them to tell them how you interpret it and to assure them that if there were any historic resources that were being impacted, they would get notice, is appropriate. But I don't know that it's a necessary part of this application. I think it's kind of collateral to that. In other words, there's nothing here that says you can't take action on this application because of the email from the Historic Society. I don't think it's necessary to your.
And I think I asked this question the last time, would the Sage House being moved to phase 3 be considered impactful? Is that?
So, I guess that's up to you as to whether you think that is impactful. To me, it's not changing the resource or the proposed use of the resource, or, I mean, at least that's my understanding, is that, they're not proposing to change the use of the building or the renovation of the building or am I right?
It's a timing.
Yeah, that's my understanding as well.
Okay, so that's, again, everything I just said to you, the preamble for that is my understanding that no historic resource is being touched in this modification over what was already approved by this commission.
And I'll punch it up further. The move to phase 3 is so that we can get the best possible Sage building. By putting it into that last phase with the last 2 buildings being done, we're going to get a much higher quality restaurant client.
I just wanted to add that, I'm not sure, Carrie, you said this, but the MUD regulations talk about the fact that they supersede any inconsistent provisions in the other zoning. And the fact that there is a specific reference in the MUD regs that gives the commission discretion, not a requirement, as it is in 10.6.1 or 2, to make that referral. So what would be it would be a meaningless provision if it wasn't intended to supersede that more general, which is, in my mind, as you said, related to an initial special permit, not one where there's been exhaustive review and the construction's already underway, the rehab. So.
Thank you.
You're welcome, anytime.
Okay, before we open it up to round 2 of the public, any questions or comments from commission members? Okay, we will move on then to, it's almost 2 hours. Does anybody need a break?
Yeah, can we have?
Yes, I need a break.
Okay. We'll take a 5-minute break.
Should I ask? And it all washed off. Oh, that is so cute. She's gonna be looking for when she comes to see you. No, she's gonna catch it.
How you doing, Tom? I never even said hi to you when you walked in. No, thanks.
Is that what it says? Oh.
We got it. Come over here.
Hi, Carrie. Nice to meet you.
I'll just show you some. There we are. There we are with our shirts on.
Where'd you go?
Yeah.
It's we're in the White Mountains.
I know.
New Hampshire.
In New Hampshire?
Yeah. So Carolyn bought these shirts for us. They have our
Well, they
I'm in the
move
woods all
around
the
a lot.
time. That's the airline. Isn't that
Because of construction.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yep.
Yes,
We
they're
also
over
are.
there. Well, there was one who walked across the street right in front of me.
Oh my God. I can be fast.
Well, my dog and I were
Thank God I live
walking,
on
and it
Church
was like
Street.
6:30. The two of us just stopped and really?
Oh, that good.
She said, don't wait for her.
Nick, are we ready to go, or, okay, whenever you're ready, Bob.
Okay, we'll now resume the meeting, and I believe we were going to open up questions from the public for round two. So again, if you would like to speak as part of round two, please make sure your name is on the sign-up sheet.
Okay. You certainly can sign up again if you'd like to. But the first person is Ben Serb, West Cotton Hill.
I'll try to keep it to mostly new stuff. Also, don't forget, Ben Serb, 139 West Cotton Hill Road. Don't forget, if you were to choose to approve this application, you'll be forfeiting the violation of the no brownstone on the Starbucks building, the brick facade on all the buildings, which was tying everything together, and the metal roof on the Starbucks building. These are things that you would be eliminating with this potential modification, so keep in mind that's a pretty big deal. And then you have to decide whether he still ties through the whole site according to our regs. Back to switching the Sage House to Phase 3 is a big impact because there's a potential it may not happen. You got to think of these things. I think keeping it in Phase 2 is important. I like the fact that he now agreed, and I don't know if you guys are going to read the conditions before you close the public hearing in case somebody sees something they don't like, but regardless, if you don't do that, it's fine.
Ben, can you read, I didn't get that last bit, if you could just repeat
The
that.
condition part, or which one?
Just the last, like, 2 sentences.
Well, I'm kind
Just
of,
sort of-
I'm standing here making it up. I was glad that the sewer is going to be added as that's obviously very important if you choose to go down that road. I don't believe we should switch the Sage House to Phase 3. That is something that directly affects the historic building. And for the record, Dan and I both met with the Historic Society. I believe it was the same night, if it's what he was referring to. And that was prior to a healthcare institution application. So I'm assuming he meant when he was trying to get the 350 apartments, that's when he met with them. I don't believe he met with them for the healthcare institution portion of this. So if I'm wrong, he can stand up here and correct me. So one of the conditions I'm assuming you guys are writing into the conditions when Dan Beret reads them is going to be no children. He doesn't want to bring it up again, but he said, yes, he's agreed multiple times. We've agreed to sewer. I just want to make sure you guys go down this. And there should be some discussion on whether you're even willing to forfeit the brick, the brownstone, and the metal roof in the original approval. You do not have to forfeit that with this modification. You can say no, and you can, because our regulations stated you needed the character throughout the site, and that was part of the original approval. You can say no, put it back on and leave it alone, and that's definitely in your purview. So let's see, what else do I have here? I don't think I have much more. We got the bed count. Thank you, Dan. So that's a 30-70 split. Okay. Oh, and back, Carrie, so you mentioned on that historic regulation, well, changing the landscape plan could be a historic tree. There could be things, I know you said it as minute as changing the landscape would have to go back in front of it. Well, there are sometimes it should. Once again, if we don't like the way it's written in our book, we should change it. It states any modification to the site must go back. And if we don't like that, I'm fine with the position you're taking, but then our words should reflect that, and that's not what it says, and that's why the Historical Commission, I'm assuming, wrote a letter stating that they thought they should be informed, and I'm glad Bob brought that up. So thank you guys. You have a big decision. It's going to be a tough one. Thank you.
have someone else signed up, Dan?
Yeah, sorry about that, Bob. Dave Murphy, 40 Carousel Drive.
Thank you. Dave Murphy, 40 Carousel Drive. Just have a couple quick high-level comments. First of all, thank Ben for wearing the red shirt tonight, as I did the last meeting. I know we wanted to get noticed. Thank you, Ralph and Mike. You were spot on to your comments, and I'm not going to repeat them because some of those are the ones I had. I'll also make a comment that if a town owned the property, they could do whatever they want, but they don't. So we need to keep that in mind. And honestly, you know, I've been at most of these meetings. We keep going down rabbit holes at every one of them, getting into the weeds, and it almost feels like, you know, some on the board are looking for reasons to stall this. The littlest word that's out of alignment. I mean, you know, the attorney said that rightly. We got to look at the scope of the whole thing, the purpose, the spirit of the thing, not try to kill this thing with every little detail. Lastly, I do want to thank the committee because they're volunteers. I'm a volunteer on the Board of Education, and it's a thankless job sometimes, and it's tough, but I do want to thank you, and I'm sure hope you'll see the big picture, you know, that the benefits of this project outweigh any drawbacks, and as a town, we really do need this. Thank you.
Okay, moving along. Tim Lavoie, 15 Chatham Hollow Road.
Hi, thanks for the opportunity to speak. I think to say what Dave said, to piggyback on that Mike Nadowski and Ralph, I think you had some excellent comments about moving forward with this. But I want to say for me, I support the approval of the application before you today. I've heard a great deal of criticism about it, but I think the facts here justify approval. We can't force adherence to a previous plan that was based on an economy that no longer exists. Changing economic conditions require us to compromise and adapt, not shake our fists and demand something no longer feasible. Housing, and especially housing for seniors, is a critical need throughout our state. This hearing has served as a forum for some that are adamantly opposed to this. However, I think there are far more persons in favor of this project being completed as it's currently being proposed than have been seen or heard at the hearings. To me, these people who don't come here to comment likely believe the reason is that reason will prevail, which I do truly hope that reason will prevail. In this case, reason being a decision that meets the best interest of all of Portland and not just a few hyper-interested individuals, with some having economic self-interest at stake. The town needs this completed and for it to become an economic engine to spur future development and increase commerce in our downtown and the surrounding areas. I respectfully urge this board to grant its approval so this project can move forward and benefit the town and its citizens. Thank you.
Okay, moving on. Patricia? I want to try again. Jerry. I was going to get that G wrong.
Patricia Geary, 3 Bel Air Terrace, Portland. Thank you to the board for all their time and efforts. I know this is difficult. I just have a couple questions. Dan had mentioned a hotel in this new
I guess
building?
if you would, ma'am, please address the
sorry.
questions to the chair. and
So he
I'll
had
get them
mentioned
answered.
something about a hotel, and that, I hadn't heard that before. And then I also had a question about the sewer project. They were talking about possible $4 million. In order to accommodate this new building that's going to go in, do we have to come up with that money prior for the town, or is that something that's going to be allocated over time? I know that he's saying they could probably accommodate the additional units to that point, but what kind of burden is it going to put on the town sewer system, or if there will be any issues with that? And then the other question I have, and I keep going back to traffic, the traffic report that was done originally, was that based on 350 units or on 240, or in commercial? That's my question. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. I guess we'll let Dan address these after this round.
Oh, yeah, 2 more. Sure. Moving on, Michael Pelton, 124 Isinglass Hill Road.
Good evening, everybody. I've listened to a lot of comments from the folks tonight and over the meetings over the last bunch of months. I've followed this project since the beginning as a Board of Selectmen member. I'm speaking personally right now, but I've followed all the way along up until now. I get asked all the time about the project from the people I see at my work and in town, what they like about it, what they don't like about it. And the only comment I can add to what everyone else has said here, Ralph, Ben, everybody, is that the people that come to the meeting over the last bunch of months seem to slant really hard against it. They're motivated to come out here, and everyone has an opinion. I get that. This is the place to express it, but in my daily experience, most of it is positive. The people I talk to, the families in town, like the idea. Businesses in town that I talk to like the idea. I love the idea. I run a business in town that works with kids. I want more families in town. I want more people in town. I want more spending in town. So I see the economic viability and benefit for the town. I see the savings of the 3 buildings and what that's going to do. I think Dan has done a nice job of balancing out the concerns and needs of the town and tried to bend as much as he can. But as the point was just made, we don't own the property. He has a right to make some money with it, and he needs to bend it to as much as we need it as well. But I feel comfortable with what's been presented. I think it'll be good for the town. I know you guys have a big decision. This is a big deal. You guys have gotten a lot of airplay over the last bunch of a bunch of TV shows of this. So I hope that you guys think about it deeply. I think it's good for the town. I believe it's something good for it. And again, I don't think it's represented in these meetings as often, but the people that I talk to on a daily basis in town, there's a vast percentage of people that I think really like this idea as well that just don't come out. So anyways, thank you very much.
Okay, that's all we have for public speakers. I believe we have one person online.
Yeah, Tim Dickerson, 12 Bell Court. I just want to say I'm not upset with the adding the way they're doing it if it's going to be a commercial entity or a commercial unit. I just don't want another 110 apartment buildings being put on this lot. We've already approved 240. That was what the MUD did years ago, and they had a whole sort of debate on getting that number increased to 240 back then. I'm concerned with if you guys accept this as a healthcare institute under Portland's definition, and it sounds like you're leaning that way, it does not meet the state's definition of a healthcare institute requiring it to be licensed. Given that it's not required to be licensed, it would be required under the state definition to be a managed residential community under the state statutes, which would require certain things on their part that they would have to do, okay, including providing the 3 meals a day, which you need to make sure that either there's facilities made or in that building for 3 meals a day, or we have some sort of license or contract showing that they can provide them. They have to have regular scheduled laundry services, transportation. They also have to have a formal established program that provides 24-hour security for the tenants, protect tenants from intruders, an emergency call system for each unit, and on-site washers and dryers, and a common space that has the capacity to accommodate at least 50% of the total tenant population. Now, you need to make sure you check that in your drawings because those are things that are required under the state definition. One thing I will share, this is out of a legislative research discussion on assisted living facilities. Assisted living facilities licensing and regulation. Assisted living residences primarily serve adults age 55 and older who need some health and nursing care or assistance with activities of daily living, but not skilled care a nursing home provides. Connecticut does not license and regulate assisted living facilities. Instead, the Department of Public Health licenses and regulates the assisted living service agencies that provide the assisted living services. So a licensed ALSA can only provide these services at a managed residential community. So that's why this has to be a managed residential community in accordance with the state regulations. Okay, they're the ones that govern the requirements. The other thing about either the MRC must be certified as a assisted living services agency or they must have a contract with one. So you need to make sure that we're going to get some concurrence or some guarantee that they're going to follow through, and they're either going to choose to be licensed as an medical care institution, which they're not, because they don't want to be licensed, or they're going to follow through as a managed residential community and be registered with the state and have this required core services on the facility and the contract with the service agency to provide these services for daily living as well as light medical care. Part of the assisted living agency services requires that when people are using their services, they do an intake evaluation of them all. All right, everybody who's going in has to have an intake and an individual service plan developed. Okay, so how much is this going to cost? Well, I'm sure Dan thinks it's going to be the same price as this apartments down the road. But from this legislative document in 2020, the average cost was $6,300 per month for these assisted living service facilities. So if you really think that you're going to get in there and get people in there for $2,000, $2,500, I highly doubt it, because I think once you contract with one of these assisted living services facilities, you'll get a better idea what it's going to cost. You know, if you decide not to make a decision tonight, then I challenge Dan to go out there and talk to some of these communities that are already in existence in Connecticut. Utopia Services has, I think, 9 facilities in Connecticut. Talk to them. Find out what their fees are per month to have it. Find out how they're doing it. Maybe you want to contract with them. You know, I think there should be some sort of approval that says he either needs to meet the state licensing requirements as a medical care institution or the state statutes for a managed residential community. And that way we can hold his feet to the fire. If they lose their assisted living services agency, then there has to be a period of time where if they don't replace them, the facility gets shut down. These are not individual apartments. This is what you're calling a medical care institution. If you lose your licensing or you lose your person who's providing all your services, that facility would have to be shut down.
30 seconds,
I know
Tim.
Dan doesn't want to hear it because Dan doesn't want to be licensed and Dan doesn't want to be registered. But the answer is that's the only thing we can do to confirm that these are not going to be apartments like the rest of the lot there. Thank you.
Okay, that is all we have for speakers for round 2.
Okay, would you like to respond?
All right, so the extent to which we've designed and refined the exteriors of these buildings is just unbelievable. I had my 4th specific trip the other day, and Alan, I think, is called in, but I don't think we need to make him weigh in on this, but I had my 4th trip for getting the colors right for the outside of the Brainerd house. I'll tell you, it's tricky. So you're putting all of this whole mosaic of things together so that as you turn in, you have the most pleasant looking set of buildings, and there's a lot of brownstone elements that I'm glad that everybody's able to see kind of what's going on in the lower edges of those buildings, all very costly. So I'm proud of the design that we've come up with. I don't feel like we're getting away with anything. The brick just didn't look good with the brownstone. That was the problem when you got to samples and you're holding them up and you're comparing these things. So the design of it I'm proud of. I don't think we're asking for any real consideration on that. On the other side of things, with Sage into phase 3, I think I covered that already. The historic review, the question was what the uses were, and it's true that we were proposing apartments. What I said earlier this evening was that the footprints of the buildings are the same, and so the view sheds are the same. So the considerations in terms of visibility of the historic buildings when we were talking to the Historic Society were exactly the same. And like I say, we brought up those exhibits as a follow-on from that. I did read the Historic Society's letter as a request for the change in the POCD to accommodate interactions with them in the future when you change the regs. That was my personal opinion on it. I want to thank the other people who've spoken in support. I can't call them out individually because I think we're all trying to wrap up tonight, so I'll keep moving to the questions. The hotel is no longer part of the application. It was a concept that received some pushback, and so we modified the proposal, so it's not being proposed. The sewer, I would like to highlight probably the thing that was said about the economics. We don't talk about the economics a lot, but the sewer usage fees that will be generated by this property that Ryan spoke of this evening was very significant and is not subject to any part of any tax agreement with the Board of Selectmen. Those sewer usage fees occur from day one as the place is turned on. And so when you take and you finance $250,000, I haven't verified those numbers directly, but I have no reason to think they're not exactly right. You can pay for a lot of the needed upgrades, and it's with those cash flows that are known from the development. So this is symbiotic. These things do work together in a complementary fashion. There was a question about traffic in terms of the net analysis. The analysis that had been done was comparing the approval in place to the modification. And so when you go through a traffic impact analysis, bless you, you have usage generated by all kinds of different types of commercial uses. Restaurants are different traffic generators than is office, than is a retail store, than is an apartment, than is an independent living facility. And so they model those things, and then they report on the net effects, and the usage or the impact is less with these changes. As it relates to the final speaker, we have a lot of folks who, I think, Google some things and then just start reading what comes up. All I can say is that what we've proposed is a commercial use. It fits the definition of a healthcare institution. We've had a lot of discussion about where and how that gets applied. There's case law on this about independent living, and I can tell you we've done a lot of research at this point on independent living, and that's how we got to tonight's proposal, and I think we checked all the boxes. So. Oh, absolutely. When council wants to add to you, you always let them.
Very quick, very quick. The case that I'm referring to is Groton Open Space versus Town of Groton, 2005 case. That's where the issue that the last speaker raised was the exact one at issue. There was an argument that the congregate living, which is no longer in the state statute, but that it had the same terminology, and the argument was that it had to meet the definition of the state statute. The court said no.
Okay, further questions from commission members? Questions, comments? Last call for members of the public, if anyone would like to speak. Okay, hearing none and seeing none, then I propose that we close the public hearing. So may I have a motion to close the public hearing? And a second? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Okay, the public hearing for application 2317 is now closed. Any further discussion amongst commission members?
I'm in favor of it. I think this is a good project. I think it's good for the town. You know, it doesn't necessarily fit what I think every single person wants for it, the town, but, you know, you're never gonna please everyone. It has the commercial use, even though it's not exactly what everyone wants or has in mind when they think of commercial uses. It, you know, kind of meets that criteria that everyone talked about and rejected the last application for. You know, it's a very broad definition, and, you know, I think this is a good solution to it, so.
Other questions or comments?
I haven't quite, I haven't solidified position, how I feel, so I would like to discuss it amongst the commission a little bit.
Sure.
One of the things that that you just said about this satisfying the commercial space, I think obviously is, you know, it's in the regs that way. And we as a commission have to look at every line in the regs. It's not that we're being picky or that we're trying to find some excuse to either approve or disapprove. You know, if I'm pointing things out because that's our job. And this is our law that we have to follow. And we have to interpret it and decide what it means and then base our decisions on our regulations. So I just want people to be clear that we're not just picking things apart for the sake of picking things apart or putting off getting to a place where we vote, because these things are important. And we voted to not increase the number of housing units on this property for a number of reasons. And I just wonder if this proposal takes any of those reasons away from our previous vote. And you know, I think the rooftop restaurant is fantastic, and building B is fantastic, and there's so much of it that I like, but we did come to a decision that we did not want any more housing on this property all at this time, all at once, without seeing how things went with the 240. And as a commission, we made that decision, and I just don't see, it hasn't been proven to me that that decision was the wrong one with any of this evidence. So I just throw that out there, because I'm on the fence personally.
So I have some thoughts about that. My recollection to the additional residential units were primarily impact to schools and traffic. And I think with this proposal, we are reducing the impact on schools. Understandably, people are talking about backfilling and all that, but because of if people move from their homes into these independent living units, it'll free up their house, but they may have moved somewhere else anyway. So,
right.
So impact to schools, I believe, is minimized with this plan, and we've heard about the traffic.
Yes, we've heard from the experts on the traffic, and we have traffic experts who have given us their opinions, so we can't really keep questioning that. I don't necessarily agree with you about the kids.
Okay.
But can you guys, can you help here?
Well, I think that now I feel better with this list of things, that I can apply a healthcare institution definition to what we're talking about. Personally, I feel that way. So
I agree with that.
if if I'm thinking that way, then we are looking at a commercial establishment, even though we are also talking about 108 units, residential units. I think for me, and I don't know how much we have to worry about this, but it's kind of what Rob said about, well, how do we know that this is really going to happen? You know, how do we know that the facility will get built so that they will come, and then that it will actually be this? It will be what it is here, because that's really what it hinges. That's as you said, we denied the additional 100 and whatever it was apartments. So that was gone. So now we're looking at these different commercial apartments, and it all hinges on how this gets done.
And that the healthcare facility is actually successful, which is very hard to accomplish.
Well, I mean,
And then if it's not successful, then we have an apartment building.
That's really kind of the issue.
Yeah.
To be fair, I don't think he would propose something that he didn't think had a good chance of success.
But how does it happen? You know, that's the thing. I mean,
Nobody starts a business that they think is gonna fail. Everybody goes in thinking that that it's going to succeed, and it doesn't always succeed. And if you look around at all the healthcare facilities that have failed, and that struggle, and that have been purchased from one company to another company, and then the services change, and the care is diminished, it's just, there is a pattern in the industry that's out there, and I probably need to cite specific examples, right, if I'm gonna say that.
I mean, the problem.
I don't know, you don't want to do any independent research, but I just want to say from a legal standpoint, you can't base your approval on whether they succeed or not in business. If it's a permitted use, I mean, again, this is a special permit, it's a modification, so you have some flexibility here, but think about it. Somebody comes to you and they want to put a restaurant in somewhere where a restaurant is permitted. You can't say, I don't think you're going to make it, so I'm not going to approve it. You know, if you think about it, you know.
I think it really boils down to, is this a permitted use? If so, we grant it. If we don't believe it's a permitted use, then you vote no. I personally think that it is a permitted use based off of our regulations, our discussions, the presentation. Everything we've seen, everything we've heard over the last couple of, weeks suggests and points to this is a permitted use. Granted, our regulations are old, outdated, but, we gotta work with what we got. And this is what we got. So, in this circumstance, I think we should vote yes, because this is a permitted use.
Jen, what do you think?
I would have to agree with Rob right now. Like I feel comfortable in seeing the list of services, that they would be required to need or whatnot. I do feel a little bit better, and I do feel confident that this does fit our definition. I feel it's a permitted use.
I guess my question would be is if there's any conditions that you'd want to make yourself more comfortable with saying yes?
That's where I'm
Yeah.
So I'm glad you said that, because I think it would be wise if you do have a motion, if we could hear the conditions that are attached to that motion.
Yeah, so the two conditions outside the few couple boilerplate that you normally have, the applicant meet the fire marshal memo dated 8/8/24, and then per Jeff's memo, that a condition of approval that the applicant provide the sizing of additional hydrodynamic separator units to be provided by the manufacturer to demonstrate that the required 80% total suspended solids removal is attained. And then I already put in as a condition regarding the supplemental thing that was put in there, that as a condition of approval, that the applicant or future operator include the language in the independent living supplement dated 9/10/24 as a requirement in any application or lease agreement for the independent living residents to reside at the facility. So that's what I have right now. I know you have talked about sewer has come up as a concern for you.
Yeah. I would definitely want some wording in there.
So something like, could be tied to the CO of the building, that we need to have adequate sewage. sewage disposal capabilities within the town, something of that nature?
I'm just saying, you know, obviously that's asking somebody else to sort of, their decision to make it contingent upon that. I think to have something in there where they obtain satisfactory assurances
From the Public Works Director that we have adequate sewage for the building to
that
open?
would- yeah.
Or give the CO?
Yeah.
Okay.
I guess I'm questioning now, might it be above the Public Works Director's purview? Because there's financing and there's,
Well, so he would be the person who would know whether the increased flow could be handled by you know,
Was
by-
there.
by the sewage.
Unknown at this point.
Well, so he knows what the flows are gonna be.
Right.
Based on the buildings. So if he sees, you know, different buildings and different uses open up in town, and he monitors how the sewer plant is operating, if there is adequate capacity within the sewage plant to handle the flows from building A, we'll say that, you know, that is, you know, he would need to basically bless the opening of the building if the flows are there. Now, if the town is able to go through the maintenance, that shouldn't be an issue. But if the work hasn't been completed, the Public Works Director is the expert in town as to where we are with our sewer system. And so he runs the water and sewer department. He's the head honcho, I guess, other than Ryan, who is his direct boss. But he's the one who would know. So I don't see anyone else within town. You know, Jeff Jacobson certainly is I have all the respect in the world for him, and he could probably do the same thing, but Ryan would work with Jeff in order to come up with that conclusion. So I guess for the person who would know best whether we have the capacity or not, it would be the Public Works Director.
okay?
So is everybody comfortable with him being the arbiter as to whether there's sufficient capacity within the sewer plant to open a given building?
I am.
Now, would that be for each building in Phase 3?
That's the way I would do it.
So, you know, each building would have to, you know, as they were opening, you know, would have to be, this is the flow, and the Public Works Director would have to say, yes, we have capacity for that.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Does that make sense? Okay.
Yeah.
Approval. Public Works Director shall review and approve any opening of a building in Phase 3 based on whether the town sewer department has adequate capacity to handle the increased flows.
Why don't we say something like, prior to obtaining a CO
Okay.
for any building in Phase 3, certification from the Director of Public Works that there is adequate sewerage capacity will be required.
So
Something to that
CO
effect.
for any building in Phase 3 will require approval, well, that is condition of approval prior to obtaining a CO for any building in Phase 3 that the Public Works Director,
Why don't you say certification of the Public Works Director that there is adequate
well, I was gonna say that the
sewerage
Public
capacity is
Works
required.
Director certifies. You know,
Okay, well,
yeah,
however you
yeah,
want to do it.
I just started writing Public Works already. Certifies that there adequate
Sewerage capacity.
sewerage capacity to handle,
No, just adequate sewerage capacity.
okay,
Because we already said each building.
yes,
right?
yep,
I think
okay.
the rest of it's a given.
okay.
Do we have, do we have someone that's on site 24 hours? Is there, I should have asked Dan, but,
I don't believe so. I know there's some sort of security, and he had talked about emergency call things within the application prior to this.
right, so
but-
there's just, so the staffing is gonna be done through an agency,
Well, so I believe he said an on-site coordinator,
an on-site
and then
coordinator.
they would staff, or, that person would then provide the staffing either through on-site contracted staff or employees.
Okay. Is that all right with everybody, or? I guess we have to.
You can bring this one up for a condition. Independent living supplement, so that's that,
Yeah, that I think is already
Yeah, I
listed.
have that.
Oh, you've got-
he's got
So,
that.
yeah, that one
He's got that
I wrote
one.
out before I knew if we got this far, that was gonna be in here.
Yep.
if there's other conditions people want to hear added, speak now.
Um, So the landscape plan, we're not, it's just.
What do you mean, the landscape plan?
The landscape plan that's part of this is the part that's.
The renderings?
We haven't discussed it at all.
Well, yeah, so the renderings right now, yeah, that would supersede the former renderings.
Okay. And it meets, obviously, the green space requirement and.
Yes.
I don't have anything else.
I was just gonna say, did we want to add anything regarding, like, approvals or, like, working with the Department of Public Health or anything, or is that just something we don't?
Well, so, first and foremost, you can't condition an approval upon approvals from entities over which you don't have control. So, I don't want to start going down the line where you could be questioned as requiring, as a condition of approval, that, for example, the public health director for your district is okay with their, I don't know, assisted living agency or whatever. I think that it's kind of a slippery slope you're heading down. There certainly is nothing wrong with putting in a condition that they comply with all state and local regulations relating to an over 55 independent living healthcare institution or something like that. And that way, they'll be forced to comply with whatever it is that is applicable to what they ultimately decide to put in there. How's something like that? Would that be all right?
Yeah, okay.
And what do we think about, like, the brownstone metal roof kind of brick thing? Do we want to, do we want to just make sure, I mean, Dan's obviously very conscientious about the site having a cohesive look, so.
I would have to have faith in whatever changes have been made. I mean, you know how that goes. You say, oh, well, we're going to do this, this, and this, and then you put it up there and it looks,
Yeah.
It doesn't look the way you want it to. So I have to think that the right decision is being made.
Okay, so you want us to work on wording, though, about having to follow all applicable state and local,
Regulations.
just.
For the healthcare institution ultimately installed or whatever.
Yes.
And again, they have to do that anyway.
Right.
But if it gives you all a level of comfort to
Yeah.
make it a condition,
It doesn't hurt.
So, yeah, it must meet all state and local laws as it applies to a healthcare institution.
because you guys define healthcare institution one way. So I would say that they need to comply with all state and local laws governing the healthcare institution they install.
And also the 70-30, 70 studio and 1 bedroom, 32 bedroom.
So he submitted a floor plan with showing that unit layout,
Yep.
so I think that's
So
Yep.
that'll
I
be,
don't
Yeah.
think you have to do anything.
governing the healthcare. State and local laws governing the healthcare.
Institution ultimately installed in building A or I, you know, whatever. I mean, because they may decide to go get a license and become a residential, you know,
Mhm.
and they'll have to comply with the rules that govern that.
Carrie?
Yeah.
Can I just say something, just?
We're
So
close
there's
now.
a definition of healthcare institution in the state statute, and then under that, there are various licensed facilities. You're not saying that we're gonna do
David,
those?
first of all, if you want to talk off the side with me, that's fine. The public part of this is closed. So I think we're leaving it open-ended enough that you'll know what rules apply to you when you develop the site.
And anything else that you guys would like to
Good
do?
with that one, okay?
I'll suggest one. You never come back for another modification. At least not while I'm alive.
I think
And you
we've
better
said
live
that
for a long
before.
time.
I'm teasing.
but we have said that before, I think like 3 times.
Yes.
That was a joke. I'm sorry. I shouldn't, it was a little.
Yeah.
The mic was
Ha ha.
Okay, last call for conditions to be added
I'm all set.
to this motion. You good?
Yes.
Victoria, you still thinking?
You don't have to make a decision tonight if anybody feels they need more time. I just want you to be aware of that.
To be honest, I'd rather just not have to come back again, so
Yeah.
I'd like it if we make a
I'm
decision
not gonna
tonight.
hold
Okay.
things
I
up.
just want to make sure everybody here knows that
I'm
they're not.
just- It's just a big deal.
It is a big deal.
And
It's a very big
It's not
deal.
an easy decision.
Nope.
And there's a lot that we have to think about. So, at least for me, it's not an easy decision.
Excuse me. It's not an easy decision.
So would you like more time to add any additional conditions, or are you good?
No, I think that, I don't want to add any more conditions personally.
Okay, then I suggest that we go ahead and make a motion. And
If I make the motion, I can still.
you can still vote against it. Yep.
Where do you want me to start?
So just the beginning, skip, yes, yeah, so like the first 3 sentences where it's, you know, to approve, you know, through the zone, and then you can skip all the pages, and then just go to the conditions.
So I can skip right here, plan set included.
Yeah,
And
so
mixed
yeah.
use development Main Street,
Yeah.
plan set included, so I'll stop right here.
Stop right at TCDD.
Okay. To approve application 23-17, 69 Marlborough Street, request for a special permit modification. Application and property of BRT DeMarco PTP LLC, map 19, lot 68, zone B2, B3, and TCVD. The conditions, let's see, this one, okay. Based on all architectural renderings and information submitted, testimony provided, and subject to the following instructions and conditions that are integral to this approval. 1, that this approval will expire in 5 years. 2, that the certified letter of approval be placed on the plan. 3, that 3 paper copies and a Mylar of the plan be submitted to the Planning Department for endorsement by an officer of the commission. The Mylar shall be filed on the land records within 180 days as per ZR section 10.5.3.2.a. 4, that a zoning permit application be submitted in accordance with the ZR section 11.1.1.a to ensure compliance with this approval. Number 5, that the applicant meets all comments from the fire marshal memo dated 8/8/24. 6, that as a condition of approval, that the applicant provide the sizing of the additional hydrodynamic separator units to be provided by the manufacturer to demonstrate the required 80% total suspended solids removal is attained. Number 7, it is a condition of approval that the applicant or future operator include the language in the independent living supplement dated 9/10/24 as a requirement in any application or lease agreement for the independent living residents to reside at the facility. Number 8, that as a condition of approval prior to obtaining a CO for any building in Phase 3, that the Public Works certifies that there is an adequate sewerage capacity. Number 9, that as a condition of approval, the applicant must comply with all state and local laws governing the healthcare institution, ultimately installed in Building A. Reasons, this proposal conforms to ZR Section 9.17 of the zoning regulations.
May I have a second to the motion?
Seconded.
Okay, we'll now do a vote. Victoria?
I vote aye.
Chantel?
Aye.
Rob?
Aye.
Jen?
Aye.
I vote aye as well, so there would be no opposition, so the motion is approved, and the application is approved.
I think we should commend the alternates who have been here tirelessly throughout this process as well. Yeah. Not every town has alternates that are that
That's right,
attentive.
that's right.
Yeah, I'll second that.
I put my pen away, sorry. How dare you?
Oh, that's right. Let's see. May I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Second? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no.
Aye.
Okay, the meeting is adjourned.
Here you go. Yeah.
Yes.